Hi everyone, so on Friday night I went to see Underworld Blood Wars. Blood Wars is the fifth film to the Underworld franchise, but the fourth film starring Kate Beckinsale as Selene. So in Blood Wars, the war between Lycans and vampires continue, but in this kind of film, the Lycans are more targeted towards finding Selene and tracking down her daughter that you meet in Awakening, where the vampires are just really against Selene because she had the relationship with Michael to begin with. And this film kind of talks more about the power of the hybrids and what Michael was and what Eve was. But it also kind of cheapens out because it's a lot of storytelling without actually seeing these characters. Now, I know what they were trying to go for the storyline, because they've now decided to make another film. So this film, the last film, I'm sure will be surrounded by the hybrids and kind of what we'll get from the hybrids. But I just feel like it's cheaping out people that really like the franchise and want to see every movie in the franchise. Because there has been Underworld, the original, was absolutely fantastic. It was such a strong written storyline, and it was just a really good introduction to the franchise. And then there was the sequel, which was fantastic. And then, of course, the third and fourth, which is what we have now, it's kind of, you can't watch it as a standalone film because there's so much information missing from the story that you kind of need to put them together to go, oh, like, this connects to this and this connects to this. And while Selene is a very, very strong character, her character is kind of reflecting so much on what she is missing rather than the strength she has, which is kind of interesting in a way because you kind of see Selene as this weak character, which in the original Underworld you never thought she'd be that kind of person. But now, like, she's all focused on, like, kind of protecting Eve, but not wanting anything to do with Eve. So it's this very interesting dynamic that we're getting from Kate Beckinsale, which makes her such a strong performer and a fantastic actress for this character. And then, of course, you have David, who works with her, which is played by Theo James, and he's absolutely wonderful in this role, and his character has developed so much from Awakening, which I think they've done a brilliant job in writing his character. But the relationship between David and Thomas has dramatically changed, and I feel like they haven't bothered to explain it or show the kind of the plot lines they've used between Awakening and Blood Wars. That's just missing that dynamic of why I should care about this relationship, regardless of them just being father and son. Like, they need to show the audience an emotional response to that bond they share. Another thing that I think, because of Blood Wars, the vampires within themselves are already fighting, as you learn from Awakening, because half of them will pick Selene's side and the other half will pick another side. Like, they're kind of showing the film that just because you're part of this blood circle doesn't mean you have that bond that can't be broken. So trying to show, like, we should just care about David and Thomas because of that bloodline, it doesn't make sense in, like, this regard of the storyline purpose and the emotional response they want from the audience. The storyline is very strong in the progression of Selene and the new villains she comes across, and the way they bring in the new Lycan leader, who I don't want to talk about too much because I can give away some major spoilers, and I really don't want to ruin the film for anyone, because I was pleasantly surprised by certain points in the film and also really, really, really disappointed in another way they took the film. So while I really want to talk about a lot of the plot, I don't want to spoil it for anyone. Because if you do like the Underworld films, you will like this. I highly recommend going to see it, but I know there's going to be certain issues with people that's either going to really hate the film or really love the film. Now, I really love the Underworld film, so I do love this on the basis that I really love the others. But if this was going to be the final film and we weren't going to get another one to conclude, I would be hugely disappointed that that's how they decide to leave their fans. So the storyline is good. The visual effects and action sequences are of course fantastic. The way they do the lichens and vampire effects are wonderful. And the fighting effects, I've always appreciated the way they show Celine's fighting techniques and kind of the boss battle, I guess you can say. I've always appreciated the fighting. And that's one thing they never ever let me down with this franchise. Also, costume and set design is wonderful. They kind of show more covens in this, so you kind of get to see all the different covens as they show in the trailer. Like, you get to see them with like white hair, which I really want more information on this coven because I feel like they're so interesting. But because the film only goes for an hour and a half, they cut out so much information that they could have easily put into the film and just made it 2 hours. Like, there's so many characters which I'm like, holy shit, this character is like intriguing, and then we know nothing about them. So I'm hoping the final film either they fill in a lot more about the coven or a lot more about these characters, or at least like give us a longer film just to like give us all the basis and conclude and like just tie up loose ends, because there's so many loose ends from all the films, not just Blood Wars, but there's so many like subplots that or characters that are missing from the first film that I thought might have came back by now. And every character in their own way has been memorable and interesting, and the performances have always been great, but then they just lose that character so quickly. And I want to know more about kind of in the time gaps, because there's so many time gaps between each film that they kind of just do a talk over and explain it, which is really good if you haven't watched the films in a while. But say you have like a marathon of the films, there's so many things you're like, okay, so this thing happened in this film, but you don't actually talk about it at all in this film or acknowledge it. And I feel like in the final film they should acknowledge it and kind of just give us that loose and tie up bit. Just for basically, again, I really want to say about someone, and I don't want to do spoilers, but I'm hoping to see a character come back. And I'm probably in denial, but I'm hoping it happens. Anyway, this film's already been way too long, so I highly recommend going to see Underworld Blood Wars. It's fantastic, though not as great as the first 2 films, which most franchises do kind of decline in value. Kate Beckinsale is fantastic, as is Theo. So if you're fans of them, it's really worth seeing just for their performances. I'm really glad they've given David more of a background and just more character development. I'm interested to see where they take his role. So thanks for watching, comment below, and I will see you on the next review.